So this somehow has not been discussed on Luke Stevens Live yet. And I know, Luke, baby, what are you doing? It's been a week and you haven't talked about Starfield. Are you okay? Maybe I'm not, but I'm about to be. Because they revealed a trailer for the Shattered Space DLC during the Xbox showcase. And this is interesting. There's all sorts of kind of cool stuff in here. We chase dreams and embrace shadows. Dun, 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 Anatoly Frost. And then they flash forward. Now in the past, in years long gone, Bethesda has always done a decent job with their big expansions. With Fallout 4, for example, as the most recent one that can be pointed to, the game story was pretty lackluster, and then Far Harbor comes out and was really interesting. Took a lot of the concepts from the base story and expanded on them, and it felt like that was, in some ways, it made up for the lackluster story. And then Nuka World was like big set pieces, really quirky and weird and just artsy fartsy, but different. It was outrageous, but cool. And it feels like this time around, they're doing something similar where this, I don't know, it looks like it probably fits more into the Far Harbor category in terms of what they're trying to do, which I'm all for. They also show a couple of things that I've seen polarized reactions to. Some people have reacted to like this shot and be like, oh God, they're just gonna go all fantasy on it. They're melding Skyrim and Starfield. I don't know. To me, this is at least unique and different. This looks interesting. And in that capacity, I'm more interested. One of the biggest frustrations with Starfield is that things got really samey after a little while. And so to get new stuff, I'm all for it. You can also see down here, there's like a little building, just to put it in scale. Like if that's a 2-story building right there, 'cause that's what it looks like, 1 floor, 2 floors. So it looks to be a pretty sizable building off in the distance. And this thing is tiny compared to this gigantic orb or whatever it is. And then you can see the player character standing up on the cliff face here. So it seems very, very large in scope and scale, which again, you'd hope for. It's been approaching a year, which is crazy since the game came out. But they show this, they've got exploration of all sorts of very different environments from what we've seen previously. They're of course going to be exploring some more occult aspects to the Starfield universe. And in terms of gameplay mechanics and things that might have been shifted or changed, it's not really clear what's here. They do show an instance where you pull the lever and then the gravity turns off and then you can pull it again, presumably comes back on. So there could be cool kind of encounters where maybe you need to be altering the gravitational force on different space stations to navigate them in different ways. There's cool things you could do there. And that was something that I felt was really missing in the base game, were ways to synergize those different mechanics that they had. Even this, you can see like going into little bubbles almost that have low gravity right here. So you're being attacked by some sort of ghosty ghoulie, and then this thing blowing it up. This right here. So you can see there's going to be presumably these sections where you're navigating sort of surrealist environments, these kind of bubbles floating in the air that have no gravity associated with them. And then you're shooting. And this is something they actually showed during one of the original reveal events, was that when you're firing certain weapons, there's an actual equal and opposite Newtonian force that applies to you. So you fire a gun, you get blasted back as well, which is how physics works. And it was something that was never really explored that much in the base game, but it seems like maybe they're going to experiment with it here. Maybe there's entire platforming sections where you have to use stuff like that to actually navigate the level, where you have to fire a gun to blast yourself in that way, or use your boost pack, whatever else. One thing I know some people were waiting for and maybe hoping for were rovers. It seems that rovers are like a separate thing. Dude, there's like a mosquito or gnat that is trying to kill me. Did Todd send you? Okay, I don't know where it is. Okay. Anyway, with that, some people were hoping for rovers. It seems like rovers are coming at a later date, and it will not be included in the DLC. The DLC was in the works well before they decided to add rovers and stuff. But we see this shot with all the people presumably in cryostasis waiting to be awoken, coming 2024. So it's still coming this year, which is good to see. And then they say, and new content coming tonight. They're adding new stuff, pool, new locations, space stations. Ooh, baby. Love to see it. New gear. Love to see it. New bounties. Cool. Plus new custom content. Yeah. Microtransactions. Here we go. Creation Club. This one, Trackers Alliance, the Vulture. Ancient Mariner module. Okay, Constellation plushie set. Those are cool. I'll give them that. That's cool. So they're adding that stuff from Bethesda Game Studios and community support. Yeah, and they're actually starting to try and crank that out and build it up. New update available tonight. I don't know. Do you guys think that's worth like a full video going through? Do you think that's worth covering? Maybe. But it seems at the very least, they are trying to now get back in the groove of putting out more content, giving people more stuff. Now, for me, my frustrations with Starfield are primarily content related. It gets super repetitive. I think the fundamentals are there. There's a few design choices that I think just don't click together that well, and it only really is exposed when the game scales to the size it was. Like if the game were 20, 30 hours long, I think it would have been, people wouldn't have been that frustrated with it. But the problem is that with 1,000 planets, like any shortcomings with exploration or variety are going to be very, very clear. And that's why the more people played, the more the average like user review was starting to drop and the reception dropped and the public perception dropped. And it's just because like they started to see through the facade. They were able to kind of see how the sausage was being made. It's why it was so bizarre. I remember when reviews dropped, some people were saying, yeah, Starfield, honestly, I think you should just blast your way through the main story and then just start grinding. Or other people were like, don't do any of the main faction content or main story. Just go out and explore freely. Like there were people that put 50 hours in before even getting the first sort of pseudo magical ability, which is crazy. So I think like with all this, more content's better. There's no doubting that. The more stuff we have, the better. With this, it at the very least seems like they're trying to do some different stuff. They're adding new space stations to explore. It's not clear how big this is going to be. Is it like a 20-hour expansion? Is it 5 hours? Is it 40? We just don't really know. But it seems like there is at least a good variety of stuff. They show some different locations, but there's kind of multiple ways that you could take it. It could be that this is the one location where the cult is gathered. There's one space station that you explore. All of this stuff is at that location we were just looking at. And so effectively there's 2 locations that have been added and tweaked, and you see it's all kind of around the same theme. That could be enough for it to be fun, but I saw one person on X that was saying, I expect that we get maybe a few dozen planets that have been custom built to be used in this DLC. And I'm like, I'm not sure we would go that far. I'm not sure if we'd do that. I don't know. Cool Master Manga, thank you for the 5. Love your content and takes, Luke. I am curious, despite the threat of Todd sending his goon squad after you, what are your right now thoughts on Elder Scrolls 6? My thoughts on ES6 right now are that BGS games are already a fair bit behind the industry, technologically speaking. They've said with Elder Scrolls 6, they want to be cutting edge. They want to push the boundary. They want to be more epic. Todd said in many interviews, he wants the Elder Scrolls to be a game series about escaping to another world, living another life. Like that's the whole premise. They want to go big and crazy with it. But if they already feel behind the curve, technologically speaking, in 4 or 5 years when that game launches, it's going to be even further behind the curve. Like if they launch, like Fallout 4 was already a little bit behind, Fallout 76 way behind, Starfield a good bit behind what their peers are doing, and then Elder Scrolls 6 I think is going to be a lot behind what the peers are doing, because again, remember, like 2028, I know some people are like, it's coming 2026. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case. Maybe, but probably more likely 27, 28, somewhere in there. But with that, like, just imagine the types of games that we've already seen through like the Xbox showcase, for example, and some of the rumblings of what like Sony studios are working on, I just don't think we're going to see a lot of improvements on Bethesda's side. Like by that point, we should probably be seeing The Witcher 4. And at that point, like, do you really think that The Witcher 4 is going to be on the same level as Elder Scrolls 6? I don't think so. And as we've seen, those games will be compared. Like, games will be compared if they're even somewhat similar. If they're in like, oh, well, they're both fantasy games. Yeah, that's enough for people to compare. And I just don't know how Bethesda is going to hold a candle to the scope, scale, and fidelity that they will present. Now, that isn't the end of the world. You can still have a game that's lower on the fidelity scale that's still really good and worth playing. There's no doubt. And being on Game Pass day one, as I'm sure it will be, will certainly help a lot. But I don't think it's going to be like a 10 out of 10, Skyrim all over again. I don't think it'll be that big. People are going to get hyped and excited for it, I'm sure, as they did with Starfield. And then it'll come out. People will be like, it's okay, or it's pretty good. And they'll move on. And it's just going to be kind of a retelling of this. I don't expect any magical comeback, because I think Bethesda just makes these kinds of games. Like they just make solid games their fan base loves. And if you're expecting it to be like cutting edge industry leading, you're probably going to be disappointed. They got they struck or caught lightning in a bottle with Skyrim. It came out at the perfect time and it was huge and vast and people loved it. And I just don't really foresee them doing that again, because we know what some of the contemporary studios and peer studios are working on. We know what like CDPR is working on, and we know what they're capable of. And I think that CDPR's track record more recently with like Phantom Liberty and everything leaves me more confident in their abilities. Going back to Starfield, I welcome the expansion. I want it to be good. I hope it's a Far Harbor example and it just comes out and it slays and ends up being really, really good. That's my hope. I think rovers will be interesting when they eventually add those. That'll be weird to see. I hope it's not just a reworked, reskin kind of thing of the jetpacks, which is what I have a feeling it is. I think it's just a boost pack that's been altered, but I think that's about it. But beyond that, I think we'll keep an eye on it. And when it releases later this year, we'll figure out what their long-term visions are. He took my thing.